All right, as I take this machine apart, and I am taking it apart, and I'll salvage some of the parts. I just want to give a shout out to the guys that used to be in my Yahoo group. It used to be called Hardware Store CNC, and the whole premise of the group was to show people you could build a CNC machine out of parts from the hardware store. Now I want to tell you, a lot of things happened that were really weird. All the parts originally, when I first started, there were new old stock parts from like Taiwan, some parts from the United States. I'm talking gas pipe and the roller skate bearings. You could get them at an outdoor store, and they came in plastic tubes, and they were for roller blade bearings, not regular roller skates, roller blade bearings, and they came in different qualities, and you could get a really good set of bearings for $8. Now that changed. It went up a little bit in price. A lot of the outdoor stores closed down. The stuff started being made in China, like gas pipe. It wasn't straight, it was crooked. And I had to keep changing what I was doing and not making any money just because the materials that were in a hardware store were getting junkier, you know. Now in this case, this is a piece of Delrin. It's a block of Delrin, right? And it comes in bars, right? So you go on, I think it was McMaster car, and I bought a piece of this, a long rod, and then you cut it. You know, you put holes in it, and then the V. I don't know if you can see the V in it, and the V slides perfectly on. Let me make sure I'm in frame. The V slides perfectly on the lip of the trim channel, and it makes it very tight. You know, there's no play. Slick idea. Well, the next batch of this stuff I bought from Master McCar was crap. It wasn't even square. It was crap. And I cut it up. I didn't notice. I started cutting the pieces, and I realized. So I contacted them, told them they'd send it back. I already cut it. Well, too bad, you know? And that's what started happening. Besides things moving to China, the companies that sold quality stuff started selling the Chinese stuff for the same money. They never reduced their prices. And I was getting emails from people. I just bought this. This isn't right. This isn't right. That, and I kept, I'm chasing smoke. I'm trying to fix all the problems that are showing up because this stuff made in the United States or sold in the United States is now made in China, and it's no good. And it was amazing. And then like the PVC plastic, most of the guys would go to a plastic store and come back with a different plastic, and then complain to me it was hard to cut. But they didn't get what I told them to get. You know, they saw this stuff here, but they found a cheaper plastic. Well, right away, they went outside the box. Okay? And in some cases, there is no box, but sometimes when you're building from a set of plans, you have to stay with the plans. Get the machine to work. The whole idea of a CNC machine, originally, my vision, was to have a machine in your hands that you could learn the software on. You could learn to cut out parts. Then you could take it to the next level, maybe buy a CNC machine or build an even better one. But my original vision was people be able to sit and run a G code. If the machine crashed, instead of having to buy expensive parts or having to have it repaired, you could remake the part yourself. And that's what I was doing. But it was amazing what was there and then what wasn't. And I kept looking at materials at Lowe's and Home Depot. And what was happening is they weren't stocking. Uh, they were running out of stuff, and then you get. In one case, they had a display of all aluminum rods, and somebody loaded the display up, and then they pushed it back under another display, or they put the other display over it. So when you went to lift the rod out of the box that it was in, it would hit. You couldn't get it out. So I went and got the manager. You know what this son of a bitch did? He lifted it up. He bent the material, and then took it out of the barrel. Handed me a bent rod and said, "I don't see that there was a problem." I said, "Oh yeah, really?" I set it down off the side. I walked out of the store. Okay, that's how it was going. And at that time I didn't have the car, and I was walking, and I had several stores I could walk to. And it was a full day project. In other words, I'd walk out 2 hours out, get the piece of material I need, and walk all the way back. So you're talking like 5 hours, some certain amount of time in the store, blah, 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 5 hours round trip. And I'd make very certain that the material I was taking out of that store was straight and wasn't marred or banged up, or God only knows what they do to the material as they're handling it. And the screws, the bolts, like I used to buy these, and you buy them in a package. And let's say this is 832. I was buying 832 with the nut. It comes as a set. And then in some cases I would cut these things a little smaller. I would belt sand them down. These are 1024s or 824s, and you can see it's been ground down. And I would reuse my hardware from machine to machine. And like I told you once before, I built a lot of machines. I'd build a complete machine just to see how a certain material worked out. And early on, people would just copy my stuff and put out a set of plans. And one guy actually copied one machine. He rotated a couple things, but they were still there. And he partnered with someone and put it up on the internet for free. And that took money away from me. Took money away from everybody, because now I wasn't able to experiment and design with money coming in. And then I started using my savings, my retirement savings. But the reason for this video is I want to tell you, if you've got a lot of projects in your house that you haven't got to yet, and you're up there in age, I'm going to give you the reality. You're never going to get to them. All right. And I know you're not going to like that reality, but I told you about, I had this one guy on my block. He was an engineer, and 3 days before he died, he still thought he was going to get to all his projects. And the reason I was talking to him about it was his wife was pushing me to get the permission from him to start throwing the stuff out. Well, when he died, they really threw stuff out. And the wife asked me if I wanted any. I didn't want any of it. I had my own stuff. But only 1% of men can handle the reality that they're going to get older, they're going to die, and the projects they have, they're never going to get to. Now, my own father, his workshop was impossible to work in. And he'd come over and he'd stand and work on over my workbench, because his workshop was so bad. And the reason was, he would take a pair of hedge clippers apart, electric hedge clippers, and he'd lay the parts down, and that's as far as it would go. And over the years, there were 4 sets of hedge clippers, maybe more, 3 or 4, but it was amazing. After he died, and I had to go through all this stuff. And at one point, he took his Sears router apart, and I had to locate all the parts and put it all back together, and it worked. There was nothing wrong with the router. I have no idea why he took the router apart. I don't know if he was becoming senile. I dread going like that myself. There are days I question my own sanity. But he started taking stuff apart and not putting it back together. And I destroyed the video that I showed, the wooden stagecoach. He was working on that, and then he got a girlfriend. He didn't want any part of it, and he was doctoring it up. He had me doctor up, take pictures, and he had her believing he was still working on it. He just dropped it immediately. That was just to kill time until he found someone to goof off with. But I dread going senile, and I also don't want to leave a lot of this wacky stuff for someone to clean up. Okay, and that's why I'm taking this apart. And it's amazing the quality I put into this stupid thing, and nobody wanted it. Okay, I'm going to tell you straight out. You know, when you know you really did a good job on something, and you designed it really good, and then you realize nobody's biting on it. They want the old machines. And one of the first ones I did, it was called the Brute, and originally it was called what the hell was it? PCB Mill. And then it became another name, and then it became the Brute. I kept making it stronger and stronger. Now I want to publicly say that the aluminum channel that I used on the early machines, it was for windows, on storefront windows. It was called storefront aluminum, and it holds the glass. It goes upside down from the way I used it. There were different thicknesses of it. See, some guys would tell me it's flexing. I'm like, it can flex. But what happened was they got the wrong type. See, I had the dimensions in the booklet of the material, and I told them how to go ask for it. You got it as scrap. You try to give the guy some coffee money and get him to cut it for you, because it's a pain in the ass to cut with a hacksaw and then grind it. And well, anyway, the people would go get a material that was similar to it and then complain to me that there were problems with it. The screw holes didn't line up, but they didn't take the page with them from the booklet, or even the whole set of plans, and show them to the guy, and then he would pick that exact material out for you. And it did come in a thicker amount, because someone sent me a piece of the aluminum, and it was much thicker and stronger than the aluminum channel that I was using. And it was amazing what I went through. But man, every week something went wrong. Someone would say, well, so-and-so don't sell that anymore. Or, Radio Shack doesn't have resistors separate anymore. And, I told you about the piker board. Here it is back here. And you could buy all the parts that went on the piker board. When I started, Radio Shack had them all. And all of a sudden, they didn't have the ICs anymore. Okay, the ICs are TTLs. But when Radio Shack carried them, when you work with TTL, it's less likely going to blow one out. And so you could still get them like on eBay and different online places. And then they stopped having the ICs. They were getting harder and harder to get. And then all of a sudden they were super easy to get, because then when the surplus from the big companies dumped onto the little companies, you can get these things for $1.20 each or whatever. But the whole board, this whole board could be done for about $85. These are tip 120s, and it's almost impossible to burn one of these out. That's what was so cool about the piker. You could make a wiring error and you'd see one of the tip 120s getting red hot, but it would still work. Where everybody else's controllers were burning out, and that was it. And I stopped making the piker, and then someone emailed me and said, I think you should start making it again. And I did. I had them made in Texas, and I paid too much to have the circuit board made. And I was milling these out on the machine and selling them. And it was a slight bit of profit. And then when I had them made in Texas, I was losing money. I understand now. I had an argument a few times. When you sell an item, you buy it for like $1 and you sell it for $3. And that's there's profit margin in there, and there's overhead. But people are saying, well, if you buy it for $1, you should sell it for $1.50. You'll lose money that way. You'll lose your shirt. That's telling, when a person tells you something like that, they have no experience in business at all. And I was running into that. I was getting business experience from people that were totally out of their heads. And you try to be polite to them, and they're real serious. They really think they know what they're talking about. And you're in it. You're in it, and you need the money to pay your bills. And in my case, I'd go to the bank and take money out of my savings for retirement and put it into another machine, into a design, hoping that people would buy it. And then you got the foreigners, the other countries, that they would beg me for a set of plans. So I said, look, the materials I use are only available in the United States. I'm using inch screws, not metric. I'm telling them all this, I really want blah, blah, blah. So this one guy really was begging. So I sent him a set of plans. And then the son of a bitch went in one of the American conferences and said, all the materials in the machine I can't get. He didn't say, I live in frickin' Germany, or I live in frickin' Taiwan or whatever. He goes, these materials aren't as easy to find. And then this other guy chirps in, yeah, he calls his machine hardware store CNC, but the materials, you can't get them in a hardware store. That's because the early machines used aluminum channel from a window company, or glazers. You get that storefront almost at any glass company. Well, then after that, I started going with like trim channel from Lowe's or Home Depot. That's when I got coined the phrase hardware CNC, all one word. Hardware CNC store or the conference, whatever I had, all one word. Motor spinners was all one word, capitals, because most people they buy motors, they take a controller and they make them spin, and then they don't go any further. And I was getting that. People were buying the Piker board like crazy, and I was losing money on it. So I made them have to buy a set of plans in order to get the board. But there were competition that came along. I won't go into it in detail. Few people screwed me really good. I was working with them, and with them it was all about the money. With me, it was, I told you, I wanted to put a CNC machine in the hands of Americans so they could learn CNC. And the goal is to try to save production in the United States or manufacturing. It didn't work. Okay, people buy things for bragging rights. They buy a better computer than you have. You're using your computer for small business and that. Other people around you are buying a better computer just for bragging rights. They never use it. They might turn it on at night and go looking for some porn, but basically they're not doing what you're doing with your machine. And my early computer actually talked to my cable box that I built myself, and I could actually decode almost any movie. And what happened was, after a while, they got lazy and they stopped changing the numbers. They used the same set of numbers every month, and I didn't have to use a computer anymore. They made an EEPROM board and just stuck it in there and called it a day. But I worked on so many projects and finished them, and other people don't. And then I start realizing that. And then one of my neighbors said to me, you're getting into a hobby business. She says, it's getting in the country. It was going. This is years ago now. She says the country's going in a direction where both the husband and the wife really have to work, and she says there's less time for hobbies. But what I was making my money on was the people buying the set of plans and not building the machine. It was a dream. They buy the set of plans, they stick it in a drawer somewhere, and I'm looking for feedback from people. Every once in a while I send out 10 sets of plans for free. So someone would actually go over it and try to find mistakes. They didn't even got back to me. They got a hold of the plans, and that was it. That's all they wanted. They wanted a free set of plans. They didn't help me, And then I did have one guy, he kept looking at pages, and he says, this is the wrong length. And then I look at it, and then I explain it to him. The man did not know how to add and subtract fractions. The whole thing was an eye-opener, okay? But at some point, I should have went with reality and said, look, I can't make any money this way. What I should have done was, I would have moved out of New Jersey and then paid capital gains on the house. But because I waited a little longer, I became 56. I was able to sell the house for a decent price and didn't pay any capital gains. So I made retirement. I'm retired. I'm one of the few people that make it, and there are population-wise, there are a lot of retired people that made it, but it's only 50%. The other 50% have to keep working, and some of them are in the neighborhood here. And the neighbors, when I moved in here, they kept asking me different questions. I kept answering them truthfully. I said I sold a house in New Jersey for I got to think now, it's $270,000, and then I paid off my credit card. I paid everybody I owed, and then I moved here. And I was living on the money. I was in a hotel, and then I bought this house cash. And they were questioning whether I was renting. I said, look it up. It's online. I knew they looked it up, but I would tell them the honest truth, but they didn't believe me. Because I'm not a normal person. I don't do normal things that the average person does. Okay, I'll tell you the truth, and a lot of times people, they can't handle the truth. That, what was that? A Few Good Men, was it? The movie? You can't handle the truth. I had a guy take me out to lunch out here, and because I sort of dress like I'm homeless. Wrong size wrench. He all he wanted to ask me was I on welfare, and then he kept asking, how could you do this? And he wanted to do what I was doing. I said, dude, I sold a house in New Jersey for $270,000. I said, I paid all my bills. I don't owe any money. And he couldn't wrap his hand around the fact that I would have that much money. But he had a family. And I said, even if your parents did die and left you money, you still have a family. That money, you're going to go through that money like 1, 2, 3. And how come I can't find that wrench? Oh, this is going to be one of those days, huh? All right. Well, anyway, yeah. So this guy, he's like, he's buying me lunch, and he's asking me these personal questions. I'll answer them, and yeah, he was something else. He couldn't take it. He was like, "Well, I have to go to work every day." I'm like, "Well, I feel bad for you. What can I tell you? I made a good move. See, the average person. I don't have my glasses on. The average person, what they do is they don't bail soon enough because they have an ego. I don't have an ego. I actually see doom ahead of other people. There's actually a wrench missing. Are the bolts kits? I ain't buying that. That's metric. Okay. Well, anyway, I just wanted to tell you, uh, people are funny. They hang on to stuff 30, 40 years, and they don't know when to throw the stuff out. And I can do it. I can do it. This is hurting to take stuff apart that I designed and built. But what purpose does it? What purpose is it? Like a monument to what I was able to do? You know, I have two that I'm taking apart and one that I'm keeping. So I do have one. All right. But the average person in this area, if I show them a CNC machine, they don't know what it is. They don't know what it is. You know, they know what 3D printers are because 3D printers really got a lot of press. Now that I have nothing to lose, okay, let me tell you the honest truth. Most 3D printers are a toy. They're a piece of shit, okay? You can make your whistle, you can make your tugboat, you can try different filaments, but with these CNC machines, uh, I was able to make mill circuit boards out and sell them and make money. And I should have stayed that way, but someone talked me into having them made. And the company was too expensive because it was in the United States. And a circuit board, I'm not kidding you, a circuit board that would cost you 50 cents in China costs $30, $15 in the United States to have it made. So I would take that $15 circuit board and mark it up to 30 and sell it. And the person had to buy another $85 worth of ICs and transistors to put on it. But you couldn't kill the piker board, okay? And that was the good feature of it. But there were other people selling circuit boards, and they were selling stuff that didn't spin the motors as fast as mine did at the same voltage. I never figured it out. One of the guys actually sent me the board. There was some type of noise getting into the IC itself, and it would just start missing steps. You could hear it missing steps. And if you isolated the IC with some transistors, external, it would work. So somewhere in the chip itself, the bus line for the output driver transistors, they didn't put like an external place to put a capacitor to filter that noise out. So that at a certain voltage and a certain speed, that chip would skip. And then there were all kinds of chips that came out. I was working on a unipolar board, the Piker, and then I was working on a unipolar switching one. And then another guy, he saw a chip that would do that. And he was in our conference, and he came out with a board. And he did really well selling the board for a few years, but then it stopped. But in other words, I saw early on that the bipolar drivers, sometimes they would glitch and both sides would stay on, and it would self-destruct. And I don't want to get into names and people. I don't want to be yelled at or someone saying they're going to sue me. But in other words, I figured out that there were certain chips and certain ways that it would be almost very hard to kill the circuit. Okay, but there are people that can still burn something out. All right. But the Piker was I would say bulletproof. Okay, I had guys that were running the Piker at 60 volts with big huge resistors. Because if you see this, there is a resistor board. Okay, so you increase the voltage, but you limit the current with a resistor. So every time the field of the coil switches on and off, because the voltage is higher, the field comes up real fast. All right, and that will make your motor move faster. All right, because you're turning windings on and off. It's not a regular motor, and the higher voltage with magnetic fields, it makes the field come up quicker, and and that I found out I can make the thing go faster. But what was happening is I got sucked into making bigger machines. One of the guys in the last comment on the last video mentions the pipe dream. As the machines get bigger, it takes longer for the motor to move the cutter from one end to the other. And homemade boards and small steppers, there's a certain size machine that it all seems to work great. Then as you make the machine bigger, two things show up right away. Well, three things. The lead screw, this thing here, the drive screw. All right, this is quarter 20. It actually sags under its own weight when it gets longer, and it whips. All right, it whips, and that messes the machine up when it gets longer. So you got to get a bigger lead screw, a thicker lead screw, so it doesn't sag under its own weight. But then you need bigger motors because the bigger diameter in through your drive nut or whatever you use, the friction goes up. So you can't use the smaller motors. You got to buy more expensive motors. So it's right there. The expensive motors have to be driven by expensive drivers. So you right away, the machine, it gets 2 foot longer, but it jumps $1,000 in what it needs to drive it. And these guys could not see it. And I said, look, when that machine gets bigger, you're going to have it. And they would do it. And then they say, well, how do I stop a whipping lead screw? Now, if they bought my plans and they made it bigger, I would tell them the secret. I said, what you have to do is on the bed that moves, you put a drive nut on both ends of the bed, and that'll get rid of the whip. Okay? And they're like, that worked. I fixed it. I said, yeah, that'll work. Okay? But it was amazing. The people that would email me every night and tell me what machines that I'm selling that people already built, telling me it wouldn't work. And then I had a page on the same website. I had a page of people that finished the machine and made stuff with the machine. It was amazing when you start realizing how many stupid people there are out there and how obnoxious they can be. You know, if they think it can't work, then it can't work, okay? And they go through life like that. And that's why when you're coming up with a good idea, don't tell anybody what you're working on until you're finished, okay? Because they'll tell you it won't work. And it might not. But a lot of people shoot from the hip. They really don't know what they're talking about. They make stuff up and then they double down on it. And then the funny thing, that one engineer I had, he come over to my house and he's in my cellar, and there's like 20 CNC machines in the cellar, and I have one running. It's milling out a circuit board, and I'm telling, you know, it was loud too. The Dremel tool spinning is really loud. And I said to him, I'm milling out some circuit boards. So I showed him some circuit boards. I said, I sell these. So the machine finished up the one board, and I shut the noise off, and I'm talking to him. He goes, do you own a pair of calipers? I thought he wanted to borrow them. And then I said, yeah. I said, I have calipers, I got a micrometer. He says, when I was in school, he says, we had to make a 1 square inch piece of metal to pass the test. And he said he couldn't do it. I thought he had to do it with a file and a hacksaw blade. That in my mind, I said, well, you know, no, he had the machines and he couldn't do it. And I'm like, oh man, this guy, you know, I used to take advice from him when I was little, but then I started realizing this guy didn't know what he was doing. And he was such a hoarder. The whole thing is amazing. And I want to tell you a very important thing in life. The people you hang with are going to limit your expectations. Okay? You can't. Here's the saying that one guy's told me. You can't soar like an eagle. You can't soar like an eagle if you hang out with seagulls. And it's very true. Now, when I was younger, my mother kept pushing me to hang out with smarter kids. But when I would go over to their house and hang out with them, they wanted to play make-believe games. These kids were older, but they were still like Star Trek type of crap. And my mother didn't believe me. But the one kid on the next block, he was building a spaceship out of cardboard. Like you would sit in it, and you have all the dials, and he was building that. And my mother thought that was crazy. But I told her, I said, this is what I was talking about. The kids that are smarter than me were dreamers. And they did very well later on. They did better than me because they were looking at all the possibilities in life, where I was looking at, if I pull that radio out of the garbage and I know what I'm doing, I'll be able to fix that radio and resell it or use the parts. Where they were looking at the future. Um, you know, if you watch Bezos, I really don't like the guy, but he's always thinking about not tomorrow, not today, not tomorrow, next year. He's always ahead what he needs to do. He doesn't let the problem uh, come up on him. He's way ahead all the time, you know. And that's what the smarter kids are like. There's a period of time there where the games they want to play make no sense at all. And like we're walking home from school, and the smarter kids watching Star Trek. I watched that too, but I also watched Lost in Space, and he just put his nose up at Lost in Space because it's stupid. Well, Star Trek at some level is stupid too because it's not all reality. Okay, but it gets you thinking into the future and the different policies okay, so the smarter kids really liked Star Trek. Okay, the nerdy kids, and I was more of a. Some kids said collegiate or something like that. Basically, I just missed getting into college or wanting to go to college. I went to a tech school, but it's amazing the journey you go through, the people you meet. Like the one guy in the last comment mentioned Bolsa Man. Who else did he? I'm gonna forget him. There was Bolsa Man, and he made he didn't make one of my machines. He got a hold of some different aluminum tubing. It wasn't aluminum tube. It was that, oh God, I forget the name of the construction tubing material you could put together, almost like Maker Slide. And I was on the one group in the RC, and I was explaining to one guy how to make one of the machines, the Seven Soldier, and I was helping him build that. And then Bolsa Man was in there, and I was explaining to him about tapping Delrin, and he tried a couple of materials. Delrin turned out to be the best. He went with a number 10 bolt. Well, anyway, for the threaded rod, he used number 10. It was like a metric size, and he made a tap out of a piece of it. And that became a thing that went around the internet real quick. And then he also made, I believe it was him, maybe it wasn't him. Anyway, one of the guys made a program that you could enter in your stepping motors and your power supply, and it would figure out what resistor you needed. There's some pretty cool stuff, but it was the early guys. And like Steve Manzer, Marty Guitars, there's another guy that helped me out with money. They were the early guys into the hobby. And then as time went on, you had other guys come in, big splash guys. 3 days, they're in all the conferences. I'm doing this, and then they're gone, gone. And I figured that out because they were wearing me out. Because, well, I'm going to the store now and I'm going to get these bolts. Well, I couldn't get that bolt. Can I cut the bolt? Can I use a different bolt? So for 3 days, you're constantly, yeah, that'll work. No, change that. Blah, blah, blah. And then by the third day, they're gone. Okay, and you get a lot of that. And that was one of the things you don't realize you're going to get. When you sell a set of plans years ago out of the back of a magazine, the only way the person could bother you is send you a letter to ask you a question. And those people, they write the letter, they send the question, you send them the answer, and they never finish the project. Okay, that's how it was. I didn't realize the guy selling the plans in the magazines or in the newspaper on Sunday, he made his money selling the plans. And the plans were good. They did work. That was it. That was it. You know, here's the plans. You paid $30. I think the name of the guy was You Build It. And my father bought a set of plans he bought 2 sets. One was a lawn chair and one was a cradle. Him and the guy at work built the cradle for their grandchildren. And my father bought the plans, and he always said to me, if you could come up with something like that. And that was in my head. And then someone else, a guy named Jack Pleska, he was putting ads in the back of magazines. And, you know, you would ask, he was like the great Bob or whatever you want to call him. And you would send him a letter with a problem. And then I guess he would answer you unbiasedly. He didn't know you, so he'd answer your question, what you should do. And he was doing that. He said he got some hits on it. So I had all these different ideas in my head, and I did go to the back of a magazine. I got published a couple times. Yeah, So I found that the most money I could make was selling the plans myself. And I did try to sell my plans through Ginrich or whatever that guy was. And he basically wanted the plans for free from me. And he was going to sell them at a markup. So I exited any thoughts with him. But, you know, because I had that crank organ. I know I deleted the videos. I can't refer you now to some of the stuff I built. It really doesn't matter because I won't say because it doesn't make me any money. It's because it basically doesn't serve any purpose. It's like this machine. It becomes basically it works, or it did work until I took it apart, but, you know, everybody wants a 3D printer now, you know, to make the tugboat and see how fast they can make their machine go to make the tugboat, you know. And there were a lot of fake newscast things, like even out here. They said there was an Amish guy making lamp sockets of some sort out of a 3D printer. And I'm like, well, I hope he checked with the, what is it, UL group, that it's safe for people to screw a light bulb into. I don't know what he was doing, if he even was doing that. But they said he was keeping the machine going 24 hours a day, making stuff. But that's what you have to do because 3D printer is so slow. A CNC printer, you put the material there and it cuts away and it leaves a thing. It can do drill holes. It can do, you know, you can change different cutters and stuff. Where a 3D printer is very limited. You're redesigning the part to suit the 3D printer. Where with a CNC machine, you're producing the same part someone does the hard way. You know, it's a whole different thing. But you know what? It's not worth arguing. It's not worth arguing. Okay, that's what I realized. You know, the guy arguing with you, the idiot, he always seems to be smarter because he's got more experience arguing stupid stuff than when you're trying to put reality out, you know. And then when he gets the person to do a certain thing and it doesn't work, he don't answer them. He disappears, you know. And there I was sitting there, you know, and then I had guys selling motors and controllers and they go away for a month sometimes. And then the person would email me, I got these certain motors. I don't know what each color does or where to how to, and I'd actually help them, you know. And I got nothing for that. But the guy that made the money off him, sold him the motors, he's gone. He's on vacation. I didn't get a vacation. It's just so funny when I look back on it. I'm like, man, I should have bailed. But you're busy. You sleep. Some nights you sleep good. But when you stay busy and you think there's possibility you will make some money, and I did for a while, but then, you know, the competition shows up. Typical business, and things I didn't expect to show up showed up. And I think that's about it. But I just wanted to tell you, if you got a lot of projects around the house that you never got to, and you're 60-something years old, dude, it's not going to happen for you. You know, I don't want to be mean, but I'm going to tell you that's the purpose of this video. Don't be a hoarder. That's some different sounds, huh? Yeah, this thing's really built pretty good. This really became a nightmare. These pieces of pipe. I went over to a place in Belleville, New Jersey. I think it was Belridge Plumbing. And I told the guy I needed different flanges. And he knew right away. He pictured this in his mind, this thing. He goes, you're building some type of machine. I go, yeah. I said, that's going to hold this. But that Belridge Plumbing pipe was so accurate. It was incredible. It was just incredibly accurate. I screwed the pieces together. And this flange up here was so perfect, and it went. Now this stuff is some of it's Taiwan, some of it's China, but you got to really play with it, and then you got to. I have this shimmed up. I have shims in here to make this straight up and down because this is garbage. Okay, and I always paint the parts. This is I painted this with Krylon black. Krylon works the best. You got to degrease everything now. All right, I think that's about it. All right, that's it.